Welcome back to Y2K. We're off to go hunt down Mystical Ultima LP Legend. I can't even say that with a straight face.
Well, despite the somber music, Diacorn, I think we're both going to try our best to embark on this journey with a renewed sense of enthusiasm and energy, and I don't know. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I think we're probably going to spend most of the second act looking for this stupid thing. And then, they're probably going to pull the power was inside you the whole time sort of cliche, knowing this game.
Well, I feel like, given the sort of relentless self-doubt and somehow very ineffectual self-reflection that our characters engage in, that would almost be kind of refreshing.
It's so impressive to me that this character manages to be not only so self-doubting, but also so far up his own ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there are a couple of comments in the thread about how, we hear about silent protagonists in JRPGs as being kind of a cliche, and now we're understanding that that's possibly for a reason, because we're seeing that it would be vastly preferable to have Alex be a silent protagonist in many situations.
And that isn't to say that you can't make a verbal protagonist, like a voice protagonist, work. In fact, I would argue that that's probably the main difference between Western RPGs and JRPGs is how frequently they use silent or unvoiced protagonists.
Yeah, in that regard, I'd almost want to point to Secret of Evermore, because that was a case of a protagonist who basically never shut up, but was still kind of endearing because he was kind of very much in his own world for most of the story, and sort of uses it as an opportunity to try and engage with his adventure a little bit more. Whereas with Alex, he's just navel-gazing for its own sake, just because he can't seem to focus for more than a few moments on anything other than himself.
He just really seems to be like, the type, the person who just loves to hear themselves talk.
Oh, believe me, I am that person under the worst circumstances.
Oh, I know. That's why I asked you to do this with me.
Excellent.
You can fill in the dead air, of which there is unfortunately a lot, because battles in this game take forever.
So is there a reason that your LP toss didn't actually hit all targets?
Alex!
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. At first I thought that I had to get a certain hit number minimum before it would start moving over to the third enemy, right? Because that's something that makes sense.
Right.
But that's apparently not how it works.
The only thing I could kind of surmise was the idea that when you use LP toss, the targets moving on the screen are in fact the actual enemies within that fight. Hey, here's a ripoff of the Toby Fox track we were talking about earlier. I mean, you can kind of hear it, right? It's still using part of the same main opening, but the instrumentation's just kind of off in comparison.
Are you sure this is not actually the Toby Fox one? Because come to think of it, that sounded an awful lot like the Toby Fox one.
Again, it's a very close ripoff.
Huh, okay.
Just parts of how it's instrumentated are slightly different.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look that up later. Once I find it, I'll post it in the thread, because I'm sure somebody on the internet has posted up on YouTube, one of the few good songs that's in this game.
So yeah, as far as what I was talking about with LP toss, it does in fact look like the number of targets that you have to hit in the minigame is consistent with the number of targets who are actually on the field. And so if you actually go through the LP toss minigame and miss one target entirely for the entire thing, then you might not actually gain it.
Hey!
That makes sense in the totally obtuse and unexplained way that seems so characteristic of this game.
And
Alex!
The thing is, it would actually be kind of interesting if the game actually went to the effort of trying to very clearly signal which enemy on the field is represented by which icon in the actual minigame, so that you might actually have some control over that aspect of how the attack functions. But no, this game just decided to cut a corner again and essentially give all this enemy sprites a generic equivalent for the minigame and also have them move so fast that you can't really target them accurately, which, for adding a certain random element to how the attack works, is maybe not completely invalid, but it still makes for a somewhat unsatisfying approach to what should be a fairly clean sweeping attack as we've seen so far.
Yeah, that was kind of my impression of it. It's not as if they didn't have the artistic ability to make pixelated versions of the monsters. It's just like, they thought, you know, maybe we could make pixelated versions of all the monsters, but...
I said no anchovies!
Yeah, and I mean, considering
no
how
anchovies.
few variations on the monsters we've seen thus far, I mean, just up to this point, I want to say we've seen...
maybe 10 monsters, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a heck of a lot to design pixel variation.
Manhole!
No, but then again, we're probably about 6 hours into this thing. So I would like to say that maybe we're, 25% of the way through, because this is supposed to be a 20-hour game. No, everybody, don't leave, I promise. We're gonna do what we can.
Yeah, I almost left in response to that. But no, you got me for the long haul.
Unfortunately. Oh, hey, Rory. This bug crops up again.
Well, again, just the very few times that comes in handy, when it does, it's notable for doing so.
It almost seems like just about every time that Rory has jumped in to save Alex, it's been just before his turn, you know? It's like this game has an incredible way of exposing the bugs.
For now, I'm kind of curious, what brings us to Monster Den Level 3 again?
Mostly because I was actually looking for how to go to the strip mall, because they said that that's where we're supposed to go, right?
Right.
I'm thinking, well, they said it was east. I forgot about that. Oh shit, I forgot about that.
I can tell that was your reaction at the time you played it, too, because you had to hit time energy to stop and collect yourself for a moment there.
I think I kind of did. It wasn't that long that I played this. I generally try and not play too far ahead after each of our recording sessions, but anyway, the reason I came over to Monster Den Level 3 was for a couple reasons. The first one was that I was actually looking to figure out how to go east, because they'd said, oh, it's a strip mall to the east, you can't miss it, right? I'm thinking, well, how about I just walk east? It looked like there was a whole bunch of stuff I could walk by, but, apparently you can't go over the road. So, that's cool, except in certain places. Then you can go over the road.
My guess is it has something to do with the railroad tracks that were there that are going to force you onto that train at some point.
No, because that would make too much sense. I said, there's a rail station nearby. How about I just take the train over there, right?
Right.
That is not how you get over there.
Okay.
As a point of fact, you get over in a completely different route, which is told to you nowhere, and we will get to it in the next episode, but for now, we're going to do some grinding. Also, I figured out that you can actually walk Alex around and he doesn't take any damage from these. I thought that was kind of funny.
It's kind of appreciable. I feel like it would almost lead to this bug because, unless I'm mistaken, you can only have 2 LPs on screen at a time for that attack. Does that sound consistent with what you've been doing?
I guess. I've just been kind of mashing it as hard as I can. It's all the enemies are just moving too fast for you to be able to really aim for them.
Right. But at the same time, that sort of sprite limit on attacks is something that's fairly common in older shooters and top-down shooters and the like. But one thing that means is that if Alex is in fact capable of moving on the vertical axis, it's possible that by getting closer to the top of the screen and the row of targets that he's hitting, he can throw out LPs more frequently, and then you just have to mash a little bit harder to theoretically get out more attacks within the space of time you have there.
Mode Wondershot, are you trying to optimize Y2K?
You did it last time, dude. I need to try and get my bit in too.
Alex!
It's also helping me think of games like R-Type and games that did that, and I just go, man, I kind of miss R-Type Final.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, even before R-Type, there were other games that did this top-down shooter style better.
Right.
If they really wanted to make this game challenging, for example, here's how I would do it, and, make it rewarding and reasonable for somebody to get a consistent result. Do you remember Galaga?
Yes.
Okay, you remember how in Galaga, it was a row of enemies in a line, and as long as you hit all of them before they got off the screen again doing their pattern, you would get points for them, right?
Correct.
It's not unreasonable to think, for example, that you could just have Alex be on the bottom and have a row of, however many enemies are on screen with their various pixels and various pieces of pixel art.
Right.
And, as long as you hit all of them, you get damage to them. Like, the game just sort of overcomplicated something I didn't know it could overcomplicate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I feel like the reason it did that is that it was trying to insert some randomness into how the attack actually works by just making that kind of consistent response somewhat impossible, but it ultimately isn't really to the game's service to take that approach.
But why is the game so actively spiteful toward me as a player for wanting to get a consistent result and master the game's mechanics? Isn't that what they should be rewarding me for as a player?
I feel like, again, it's one of those parts where you can't really attribute to malice what you can to a lack of effort. It just seems to me that the approach that they took is one that's probably just easier to code and requires a little less particular creative thought to it. It's just kind of the path of least resistance that ultimately makes for unsatisfying gameplay.
Maybe, but you and I were looking through interviews for this game and doing our research, and it took them like 6 years to make this game.
Oh yeah, but why do I get the feeling that a rather inordinate amount of that time was ultimately spent on the writing?
Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got. It's like they really put all their eggs in one basket with the writing. If you identify with Alex, and my God, I hope you don't, then maybe the writing strikes a chord with you, but if you don't, then that's all your development effort and resources focused on that one crucial linchpin, right? You can't have one character underpinning the entire game. There's such a thing as a character study in a book, like a book is written around a character.
Right.
But that's usually with a character with appreciable qualities.
And realistically, something like a JRPG, even one that focuses on a very small cast, or even just one character in the likes of, say, an Undertale or a Secret of Evermore that we brought up before, part of what gave those games appeal was the fact that it was about exploring the rest of the setting, of dealing with characters that weren't just the ones you controlled.
Exactly, and this is really one of the core appeals, I would say, probably of the later Final Fantasy games especially. When they started trying to wow everybody with graphics.
Right.
That was part of it, if you want to talk about some mainstream RPGs that do this. And, the Final Fantasy games are of varying quality, and which ones are good and which ones are bad is kind of up for debate. But, you can do a protagonist who just knows nothing about the setting. And at least as far as the modern Final Fantasies go, I would say Final Fantasy X is a great example of that.
Yeah, because ultimately, your opinions on Titus as a character notwithstanding, the fact is that he was very much a fish out of water in his own, what was ostensibly his own narrative, and the fair amount of the story explored that in a way that, wasn't always consistently amazing, but at least fairly good in terms of his characterization.
That's what I would argue was the real point of Titus's characterization in that game. He had a clear character to start out with, but you didn't hate him. The game's narrative is about building this fantasy universe that Titus is experiencing for the first time, but Titus has his own thing to bring to the table there,
At least in the sense of perspective. Also, yeah, again, thanks for reminding me that with Panda Barrier up, Rory is quite redundant in this scenario.
Yeah, I really don't know what to do with Rory in these situations. Honestly, I think I might just, like, whenever I have Panda Barrier out, I might just have Rory defend or something. Gets me to the next turn a little faster. Though I do always feel kind of bad for him.
Yeah. Just a complete aside, I heard something about Rory that's, or at least his treatment in this story, that's kind of completely infuriating.
What's that?
I don't know if it's, well, he's vanished again, so maybe he doesn't want me to talk about it, but...
Alex!
He's vanished at least 4 times this episode.
I said no anchovies!
Well, what I can say is, I believe Grandma Party's thread brought it up at some point. I don't know if it's still something that could come up. Rory, please! I'm trying to take your side here, man.
Ow! Alright.
I guess you could say Rory just wants to fall on the sword today. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
You know, okay. What I was saying was that there's apparently something that happens to Rory, or rather there's a route split at some point in the story where Rory's fate can be determined by what we end up doing in Alex's skin. And one option I understand to be just fairly bland, the other is horrendously offensive.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, they kind of crossed the bridge with that one.
Yeah. I was wondering if maybe you'd heard about it.
I hadn't. Like I said, I've done everything in my power to avoid reading Grandma Party's thread, or alternatively reading anything in the game that could spoil its mechanics or story.
Yeah. I'm the same way, but I usually read Grandma Party's thread just after we pass that point in our own recording.
Alex!
That's kind of what I try and do.
And yeah, what I happened upon relating to Rory was something that apparently came up at a point around when we recorded the last episode, so it's possible that that ship's already sailed in our case, and there's really nothing more for us to do about it.
Oh no, we could have doomed Rory. Whatever will we do?
Well, I don't know, man, but
how will we beat the rest of the game if we don't have the ability to shield our characters from damage?
I don't know. Alex can do it, I guess.
I mean, I feel really bad for
Alex.
Rory because, like, his character is... I would argue that besides Bella, he's probably been the most reasonable character so far. He feels like the only character who kind of has his head on straight besides Bella. And I want to use him more. Like, I wanna like Rory.
Yeah.
But just from a mechanical perspective, he is strictly inferior to Alex.
And even in that assessment, I would say something like, Michael may be somewhat abrasive, and we don't really like kind of his particular rapport with some of the other characters, but even if his role in this adventure is overall kind of questionable, he's still ultimately trying to support his friends, so...
No, that's true. You can't really hate Michael for that. I guess it's good that he came along with us because, like I said, he just seems to have strictly better stats than everybody else in the party.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I don't know why his HP is so high, but...
No, his HP is high, his PP is high, and, like,
Michael!
all his other stats, his strength and crit chances are both absurdly good, too. I'd like to say at this point in the recording, Alex has something like a 50% crit rate, though.
Thanks for giving us the luck build, everyone.
Also, those of you who suggested LP toss as the way for everything, thank you so much. It is actually awesome. Well, it's awesome when it targets the enemies I want it to target. Anyway, you see that train? That's not how we get over there, because that would make too much sense.
Okay.
We can't take any of those cars either. I spend a little bit trying to figure out how I got over here. Eventually, I figure out that if you go down to this particular junction, you're able to cut through. But there's no indication as to why.
Actually, there is an indication. There's a crosswalk right there.
God, I hate myself, and I hate you for pointing that out.
Got him.
I don't even know if it's that. Did you notice that like some of the roads have a very slightly raised edge that you can't see even at 1080p?
Yeah, and the crosswalk is absolutely minuscule considering how it's actually supposed to help you with traversal on that.
Well, now I know what to look for.
Again, it makes a certain logical sense, but it's also just something that again was not designed particularly clearly, so.
It sort of makes sense to me in the way that Sierra games from 1995 made sense. Also, I did start, getting rid of these because, holy shit, nobody wants to watch me do the mine dungeon.
Did you see Combat Lobster post his video about New Game Plus in this game?
No, I haven't, but I'll look.
My god, I had a minor nervous breakdown when I saw that.
I assume it gives you all your points back.
Yes, so that means that whenever you play
Oh, has the Dungeon Master finally sent me the help I requested?
They're really getting their mileage out of Marlene, aren't they?
Oh,
Hi, Charlene.
you won't.
Did you notice that we got a skill for Chandra? I don't know who Chandra is, but cool, I guess.
It's all good.
Do you know
This
how
kind of
to
tells me that I'm
science,
a bit
boy?
over-leveled
Have
for
you
this
even
area.
had a proper education?
Conceivably.
Did he just call us boy?
Arithmetic, history,
Yeah.
Latin, astronomy. That offensive look of disease shows me that you
Astronomy
haven't
is
even
apparently a lot of fun
graduated
if you're not an
primary
astronomer.
How can you
Oh,
look
astronomy
upon
is
me
wonderful.
knowing who I am without a proper education? You do know who I am,
I'm gonna say Goth Harry?
don't you?
I am Dr. Aryabhactagon! I'm the famous
Wasn't he in
mathematician
Dynasty
astronomer
Warriors?
from the classical age of Indian mathematics and Indian astronomy. The golden era!
499.
Well, 499 is definitely after Dynasty Warriors, so I kind of doubt it. What I'm having a bit of trouble with is whether to read the sort of black stripes immediately under his face as a beard or a
He
neck.
doesn't want me to solve the
Yes.
problem.
Thank you for the mathematician's answer on that
You know
one.
the problem, don't you?
He is a mathematician.
How he sends you down here without even telling you the question. It's his job to ask the questions and
So what I was mentioning earlier was because
Go
in New
back
Game
to
Plus
floor
you're
30
funded
and
all your
find
points.
out what the question
Anytime you
is.
start a new game,
Once you know,
you will
come back to
spend
floor 20
literally
and
an
I'll allow
hour
you
and
to watch
15
me
minutes
work.
going through the entire
I spent
mine dungeon all in
1238
one go,
years
just
trying to
getting all
answer
your
this
skill points and
question.
abilities back.
What difference will a few
Oh,
more
good.
hours
Why
make?
would I play the actual game when I can play the mine dungeon? So anyway, I level up a bunch. I think last time I checked at some point my stats were like... I like to say I had 69 luck by now.
Nice.
And now I find out that you can take the bus to go to the strip mall.
Well, bus stop in the middle of nowhere isn't exactly helpful in terms of directions as such.
No, it's not.
So, yeah, that was quite a series of levels you got, I guess.
It was. Dear God, what am I doing with my life?
Same thing I am, buddy. We're suffering through this game.